position changes here. Other thing to note is, of course, Brigida with the armor, how the rally armor works now goes on top of shielding, so Zenyatta's not going to have as much fun as usual. Global Esports going to start things out from what we can tell to be a triple DPS.
And funny enough, Jupiter are the ones sticking on 3-3s. That does mean Tayo is going to be putting on the Zarya boots. And notably, no Zenyatta, they are going to be sticking with Ana.
And I think for Global Esports, as long as they keep Little Rats alive, he doesn't get himself implicated by Anakin's Brigida here, he should be okay.
Took some early...
looking for some good early damage.
Yeah, Xeon Flux did have to sit in the pocket of Little Rax for a moment there, but now Global Esports can kind of get back into the thick of things. So there's kind of very interchangeable windows for both of these teams where picks are very possible.
And this is where the first hack did come out on Samurai D, but as the point comes through, the hack's already gone, so now Jupiter can act.
And that's the thing, it's you know, the window now opens for Jupiter, but unfortunately losing Anakin, suddenly it closes very promptly. Now Samurai D going down and Tayo taking a lot of pressure as well. So Global Esports looking very poised to be able to take this first cap.
And Global Esports are going to do this without spending any ultimates as well, and part of the advantage of running DPS early with that extra spam damage and taking the extra angles is players on picks like Tracer and the Fire here are going to be able to get those two up quickly, and they don't even have to use them, so they will be able to now basically get to use them to win this next fight if all things go smoothly.
So I think Jupiter's still a fair ways away from some of those important ultimates. Also, Sabagod making a swap onto a Moira.
And Ana would have probably helped a little bit. Speaking of the no Diva on the other side, Pulse Bomb.
Uh-oh, that's not what Little Rax wanted. That's a real unfortunate one. The ultimate going wide, I mean, that happens, but now they're one man down and a very critical member as well. Stun on Satchok as well, so he's in some pain, but nice EMP, but countered largely by the sound barrier, and Tayo the only one to die to the Rocket Barrage. So Global Esports are the ones who have committed a lot more right now, partially because Jupiter don't have anything to commit yet, but they're still steering clear of these ultimates without really losing anything, and now starting to make some headway in terms of kills. Late res on Satchok keeps Global Esports in the fight for a bit longer, but now Jupiter coming up on rotation of those ultimates and looking like they should have little trouble finishing this fight off.
And Jupiter gets to just go into that player advantage so easily as well. Tayo back in the mix means they're fully reinforced, and for Global Esports, likely have to give this up pretty soon.
Yeah, Satchok's doing a good job of just stalling it out, getting more percentage up, and potentially baiting ultimates out. Jupiter don't take that bait, though. They're going to hold on to what they've got.
Global Esports need to make sure they can get this reinforcement in themselves. Don't lose any more members. Lorex going down as the Pulse Bomb comes up. Not a good look.
Yeah, and again, Jupiter didn't actually have to commit further ultimates, pushing it up to just under 70% there for Global Esports, and they're actually going to go ahead and swap onto their own 3-3, very much behind economically.
And this is where it does kind of hurt, right, because they actually had a Barrage and Pulse Bomb and all those things coming up, and for Global Esports to go back to nothing, it's going to hurt, at least for a little bit.
Very aggressive passage of play here from Jupiter, the Coalescence, the Primal Rage, but it hasn't actually paid off just yet, so they need to be careful that this doesn't become an overcommitment. Haven't really picked anything up, now just trying to harass Global Esports in the rotation and eventually reset. Oh, Claire goes down. Grav's going to have to come out, and they're layering it in with a self-destruct. This is going to have to pay off, and it finally does. Everyone's stuck up in that Grav, but I think that was a lot more expensive from Jupiter than it maybe needed to be.
Testing out the waters, though, seeing what they can get away with and having the backup options available, very important for this now defense squad who are trying to take up more percentage points. If the initial couple of ultimates don't work and you want to throw the Coalescence in there, because Sabagod does want to go back to Zenyatta to be able to match in this 3-3 matchup, Jupiter always do have that extra Graviton Surge.
Samurai D's got another Primal Rage available as well, and he's actually going to go ahead and commit it right away, so they're not actually in too bad a shape. That's going to force Transcendence out of Xeon Flux, so Jupiter, they want to keep pressing this one actually, the Sound Barrier as well. They should be able to come up on their Grav about the same time as Little Rax. Speaking of, though, he picks up a kill, and now Jupiter starts to absolutely hemorrhage. Global Esports actually didn't have to commit too much there. They were more than happy to throw that Earth Shatter in, given that Samurai D had used his Primal Rage.
This is where Samurai D probably wants to look for a swap onto the Ryan, and D does. The good news for Jupiter is they've been able to match in terms of that Graviton Surge. In fact, Tayo has mostly been ahead of Lil Rax, despite already having used a Grav, and for Lil Rax to, you know, basically have a life ahead of him, you can sort of say here. Jupiter still waiting now for this next sort of re-entry, this next retack. They do still have to work on this new Shatter as well. Timing starts to look a bit dire as well, nearly 90% for Global Esports.
Yeah. Timings, though, speaking of ultimates, are decent for Jupiter. They're coming up on that self-destruct, whereas Global Esports a long way away, so that's a combo they have access to. They don't have anything to deal with this grab, though, except for just throwing Teos out into the mix, and unfortunately, that did not pan out for Jupiter in the slightest. No way of mitigating that grab and their own not connecting. So with that, Global Esports going to be able to clean up this final fight without really breaking a sweat, to be honest, and going to close that out in the overtime to open up Lijiang Tower 1-0.
And this is where once we do start to get actually into this 3-3 mirror, Global Esports in their comfort zone, you can see how prepared they are to make that swap as well. They're a team that, despite having some really decent advantages in terms of the DPS ultimates, gave up a Rocket Barrage, gave up a Pulse Bomb, knew that if they were going to go into the 3-3, even if they were going to be behind for at least a couple of fights in a row, once it really comes down to, I guess, the breaking point, when the overtime hits, they're going to have the advantages, they're going to be in position to win.
And now we move on to Control Center, where you'd feel that that only works more in Global Esports' favor. Both teams going to be starting on 3-3 on this map, and you'd be a bit of a fool not to right now unless you're just putting a Sombra in there. So this is where Jupiter kind of need to step it up to match Global Esports' level of 3-3.
And Global Esports and Jupiter, as we mentioned in the sort of pre-game here, both teams do favor this kind of comp, so you'd expect the power levels of both teams to be at maximum in this kind of mirror play.
Very aggressive maneuvering from Jupiter and actually working quite well. They're really trying to keep a lid on Global Esports, but now it's Global Esports' turn to jostle back.
Yeah, I have to look at opening damage as well. A lot of low-ish members on the side, but no one's going down yet.
Some getting a bit down to the wire, but everyone alive, and now Jupiter can maybe push back.
Hiroro
overextended while he was trying to swoop onto the back line, and that's going to really hurt Jupiter here, just that damage mitigation that they now lack. Stun on Azure, though, and a nice kill on Satchok. They're very quickly recovering this. Also, Sabagod getting and Transcendence just before Xeon Flux. Not going to need it, but that was something that they had there. If it really came down to a game of inches, Jupiter were leading.
A quick decision-making there from Jupiter as well, knowing that they had a DMEC, they had lost a member, they need to make that trade ASAP, go on top of Satchok. That's a much better member to get down. You can lose your Diva, not the most important member, but if you lose the Rhine, that's kind of the fight over in most cases.
Yeah, very tight fight on the whole. Now Jupiter, because they've won it, are actually ahead in most ultimates here.
And this is where you do want to see them leverage into this Earth Shadow, and he's way ahead of Satchok, by the way. The rally in does say that they do want to push forward.
There it is. They throw it out while Satchok's shield is unavailable. Transcendence going to respond, but they are already one member down. So Jupiter more than happy with that ultimate trade, given that it is also a kill. Global Esports are going to be able to back off. They will lose Xenofly as well, but not too bad. Jupiter, though, getting some good value.
I think Global Esports are happy to just only lose one member here. That's realistically it, or one or two members. That's not the biggest tank from Jupiter, who are going to get a decent amount of progress on the point itself, but not the highest value out of it. Now see if this grab can do more.
Really great timing, and they throw in the self-destruct as well. It's really brilliantly placed, just keeps the pressure on. Satchok kind of had to turn the shield, and that actually just ended up leaving other members vulnerable. So Jupiter, either way, they were going to be able to secure that fight without too much issue.
Now this time they click with interest because, as we said last time, didn't get too much on the fight. This is basically a full team wipe. This one's going to hurt a lot more. They got to build up some extra ultimates. Global Esports, you'd expect to be a little bit closer to be able to compete, but that's really not the case yet. They are still only sitting on a Shatter, soon to be a self-destruct as well, as Jupiter are heading towards 90%.
Lil Rex committed his grab in that fight, so I mean that's just one less thing they have here. The Earth Shatter comes out, but it's largely blocked up, so it's a little bit of connection. They need to be able to follow up, but they're having a hard time thanks to that sound barrier from Claire. Tayo, though, in trouble, is going to go down. Now, Little Rake's going to be traded out, and Jupiter coming out the better of this trade so far. Self-destruct will not find anything. Xenofly will remech, but they're starting to lose a lot of members now. Satchok going to be rescued for the time being, thanks to that Transcendence, but now Shatter coming up the Samurai D. Brilliant charge in. Satchok able to find that one out. Sorry, was the Earth Shatter. Now Jupiter starting to lose a few members here. Shu might just be going up to the other foot here, but Sabagod has this available, and they are in the overtime.
And this is where you do want to kind of see these ultimates come into play if required, especially because Tayo's getting low now.
Yeah, there you saw Samurai D as well taking the heat, so Sabagod commits that ultimate. Global Esports starting to come up on some rotation of their own, but Jupiter nearly on a grab self-destruct combo. That could be what they need to clinch this.
And this is where Xenofly's already been DMX. You can just throw that one out where he wants to.
And they're going to be able to finish him off. So there it is, the grab with absolutely nothing to deal with it. They can block out the self-destruct, but nope, Satchok getting stunned. Can't even do that. So Jupiter, 100-0 on Control Center, which is where you would have actually felt that the 3-3 mirror favors Global.
Well, I don't really know about that because both teams, like sort of mentioned here, both teams really do want to play the 3-3 when possible. The big difference between this and Gardens is the fact that because Global Esports started on the DPS and Jupiter felt like they needed to play counters with the Winston and then also the Moira, once Global Esports went back into a standard 3-3, which included a Ryan and Zenyatta, Jupiter were behind the 8 ball in swaps, and they didn't get their own Ryan or their own Zen and Zenyatta until it was too late. This time when we go in control center and both teams start equal on the exact same picks, Jupiter have a lot better time.
And that does now mean that actually Jupiter can kind of set the pace a little bit here. It's Global Esports that have to figure out how they want to deal with Jupiter's 3-3. They can just start on 3-3. Global Esports are the ones that have to match.
So this is now where Global Esports doing the same thing as they did on Gardens to see if Jupiter want to respond with the Winston and the Moira again. If they do so, Global Esports can then just swap back onto 3-3.
It looks like both teams are considering swaps here. Global Esports going to swap into 3-3.
Like a double bait.
Yeah, they're only moving on to the Moira though, so they're not fully swapping.
Jupiter should swap again. I was going to say, if Sabergod sees this, he should go into the Zen, force now this 3-3, and they're even. No team is even capped yet. In fact, Jupiter's on the point first.
Yeah, just because of how the timing of that works out. Nicely timed there from Jupiter to get the opening, and they're on that mirror that they just beat Global Esports on.
Fantastic bluff by Jupiter as well. They now get the favorable composition. They force the exact mirror, and Global Esports need to push on the point.
You can look at this. Global Esports, they even look a little bit rattled right now, only just starting to make their first pass, and Satchok took big chunks on the early rotation.
We look at this early damage coming through as well. Sabergod really starts to make some progress.
Now here's the commit to the point, but stun on Satchok, and Azure already low. They need to be careful how they balance this. Anakin might get finished off here if he's not careful, but it is going to be Satchok, the first link to break in the chain now, and the rest will start to fall to bits. It's a much longer retreat for Global Esports. Might not be able to get so many of them out alive this time around, certainly not Xeon Flux. And Bubble Kitty's going to go ahead and be a sacrificial lamb there as well.
And Tyro's going to go down here, a bit of a consolation prize for Global Esports, but when you consider that most teams, when they win that first fight, now they get to cap. Jupiter are already 40% plus where they would normally be if this was a normal game. But Jupiter right now sitting on a ton of ultimates, still have point control. Global Esports just need to force a fight.
Death of Tayo might be a bit of a complication though, purely because he loses all his charge and Lil Rax can be potentially getting ahead of him in ultimate. But right now it's just a lot of Earth Shatters being connected and not a lot coming of it. So Global Esports starting to lose out in terms of ultimates available, but a second catch on Tayo means Lil Rax will definitely get his grab before Tayo does. They've also got a numbers advantage, might not even want to commit that grab if they don't have to here. Picking up Ken Mohororo's mech. Samurai D in trouble, and Jupiter, they see the writing on the wall. They do have a sound barrier, but they don't want to commit it. They want to just let this one go, sit back, charge up new ultimates, having got to 85%.
And honestly, the first death for Tayo, not that big of a deal. Yes, it does hurt, but they can regroup. It's fine. It's the second death that really puts the nail in the coffin, because now if you're clear, do you use the sound barrier just to stay in the fight? Because if you do, the grab comes through. You got no defense, you probably lose anyway. He at least saves it against the grab, but Global Esports, they get a decent amount of momentum off just that one pick and then winning that fight.
Earth Shatter out, really nice connection, very quick pickup on Anakin there, and Jupiter, again, they know better than to commit ultimates into that one. They're happy to have just got the Shatter out of Satchok. Bit of a late catch on Bubble Kitty, actually.
That might actually end up helping them. It's kind of the opposite of what happened earlier with Tayo and with Jupiter. They're at least very much ahead in terms of progress here, so they can kind of leverage into this buffer they built for themselves with now nearly full 6 ultimates coming into the next fight, which is going to be pretty bloody. 2
taxis, both going to arrive pretty much at the same time. So Jupiter now just looking to pressure in. Earth Shatter, a little bit wacky, but it does get some connection. Quick pickups there. They commit a grab in as well, wasting absolutely no time or brass on this one. Jupiter still holding on to a few for what will probably be one last fight after this as they get the cap back in their control.
That's such a huge one as well. All 6 members down. The grab eat by Ken Mohororo. That means the sound barrier used by Claire, they get to use the full force of that just to get aggressive. Good news for Global Esports is they held on to basically every other ultimate. They can come back in strong, but this will be the final fight for them.
Sabergod does have the answers to the Earth Shatter, which is probably the only thing Global Esports get. Good save by Azure there. He's going to be just fine. Comes into the fight, able to get the sound barrier in. Now self-destruct up from Ken Mohororo. Matched by Xenofly. 1 for 1 so far, but you're definitely hurt for the loss of Little Rags. Shatter out from Satch, or was it? I think it was, but at any rate, countered largely by Sabergod. Now Shatter out on the other side. That one's going to connect big and good. A couple of kills coming through, though, on the side of Global Esports. It's still potentially anyone's fight. Jupiter really holding on by a thread here. They need to finish off Satchok, but they're not able to before the healing comes in. They actually choose to commit the rally even as they lose Samurai D, finally finishing Satchok. Jupiter is struggling to reinforce. They're rushing back onto the point here.
Both teams are very confident about this fight. Global Esports know they have to win this one, and Jupiter feel like they can still do it. Claire's close from sound barrier.
That's the thing. Jupiter are the ones who could afford to back off. So the fact that they're staying in says that they feel they can do this, but now losing Anakin, they might have to start ceding some ground. Ken Mahororo gets the mech and finished off. So this is going to go back the way of Global Esports.
And I think it was 50-50 for a long time, but where it kind of spills over to the side of Global Esports and really starts to favor them is when Satchok gets really low, so does Samurai D, but it's Samurai D that goes down very early compared to Satchok, who stayed alive for a very long time. And for Jupiter to then say, okay, maybe we throw some extra ults in there, maybe try and find some extra effects. Unfortunately, that didn't come through and they end up walking away.
Now things are eye-bleedingly even. The advantage that Global Esports have is they will have a grab self-destruct combo. Jupiter will only have a grab, and that could honestly be all the difference here.
The sound barrier is still available as well, which can counteract a decent self-destruct if placed correctly. Shadow as well for both Reinhardts is going to be very important.
So close here. Actually, by the time this fight breaks out, Ken Mahororo might just have a self-destruct.
The best
go ahead and commit theirs first. There's the self-destruct in. Oh, Xenoflyer's got the big one. Just look at them all land down, and now Global Esports playing absolute janitorial duty there. I think Jupiter were maybe a little bit hot onto the trigger for that one, and Global Esports could just kind of design the fight however suited them. With that, they will pick up Lijiang Tower.
And that's the kind of fight lost for Jupiter. You got to be shaking your head because you're thinking, okay, the grab wasn't the best coming out from the side of Global Esports. Only caught Ken Mahororo, and still 2 members went down to the self-destruct. What's going on there? That's not something you want to be seeing if you're Jupiter.
Especially when they'd actually just connected a decent Earth Shatter. There shouldn't have been as much follow-up on what Global Esports had already committed. So you maybe look at some misexecution there potentially. At any rate, I would say that was fairly close. You see the 99-99. You see the 100-0 actually that Jupiter had on Control Center. Gardens was more in favor of Global Esports than it was in Jupiter, but even then they got some percentage. This is looking less like the underdog coming up against the higher seed and looking more like 2 very evenly matched teams.
And I think partway through Night Market as well, you start to expect, okay, this should be now a Jupiter victory on Lijiang. If it isn't, it starts to feel like an upset for them to lose that one because they're so far ahead. They got themselves to that overtime, the 99, fairly quickly. They had a very good lead to start with, winning that first fight, already having camped out before. Called the bluff on the changes as well. That's something they adapted to very quickly, knew that there was something that cost them a round on Gardens, and then going on Night Market, seeing the composition, saying, okay, we're not going to fall for this again. If this is how Global Esports want to play, we're going to be able to force the 3-3. That's exactly what happened, and they had the early leg up so quickly.
And the thing that's a little bit heartbreaking about it is if Jupiter had actually won that, they could dictate the pace of the whole series, compositionally speaking, because they can just sit on 3-3 until Global Esports figure out what to do and force them to change, at which point I feel like Jupiter still have aces up their sleeve. They've still got other compositions they can play. But now that they've both traded a map on, like within Control itself, both playing that 3-3 mirror, it says that neither team is inherently favored. So maybe Jupiter are going to have to start digging deeper a lot sooner in this series.
Well, this has certainly gotten very competitive, and I'm looking forward to seeing how both teams are going to react once we get onto hybrids. Let's go ahead and figure out how that game mode works.
Welcome to Eichenwald. This is Hybrid. 2 teams face off as either defenders or attackers. The attacking team has a limited amount of time to first capture a payload and then escort it along a set path containing 2 checkpoints. To capture the payload, the attackers need to stand within its range for a set amount of time. Defenders can delay capture progress by also standing in range. The attackers must work together to clear away the defenders. If successful, they score 1 point and gain additional time on the clock. The payload only moves forward when an attacker stands near it. Defenders can delay the payload's movement by standing nearby. To get moving again, the attackers must clear away the defenders by force. If even one attacker is capturing the objective or on the payload when the time runs out, the game enters overtime. This extends play indefinitely until the attackers are either cleared away or they gain more time by reaching a checkpoint. Every time the payload reaches a checkpoint, the attackers score 1 point and gain additional time on the clock. The round ends when the payload reaches the destination or when time runs out. Teams switch sides each round. Whichever team scores the most points and escorts the payload farthest wins.
And now Jupiter finding themselves at an early deficit of one map. They get to select the map, and it will be on Kings Row instead. It kind of says to me that they want to go on the hybrid that kind of forces a little bit more 3-3 interaction once we get past that 8 point. And let's be fair as well, Global Esports should not be afraid to play 3-3 into this Jupiter squad. I mean, we've said that both these teams are very comfortable in this composition. We once again go to this map, and I have to say, I don't necessarily think it favors anyone. I think both teams should be good here.
Yeah, I mean, certainly after Night Market as well, like we were just talking about, both teams have beaten each other in the course of the series so far with the 3-3 mirror matchup. So what it says is if Jupiter are picking this, to my mind, it says that they feel that their 3-3 is just that little bit better here than it might be on something like Lijiang Tower.
It also says to me is that they're trying to account for cases where maybe Global Esports will want to go into DPSs, and they're going to take the hybrid that has the least chance of that happening, which is going to be here.
Of course, we did see a little bit of that Wrecking Ball, triple DPS, even quad DPS. Not to too much success out of Global Esports, mind you, but they showed a willingness to play it.
And now Global Esports, if they want to lean into it more, which currently they're not, but if they did, it would be somewhat surprising because for 7 weeks they didn't do that. And then with 1 week of practice, they've suddenly swapped gears entirely. But nope, got to stick to the tried and true. Xeonflux even on the Ana as well. Global Esports on this defense, very predictable, but also very consistent.
Speaking of tried and true, Jupiter also just going to go ahead and run the 3-3 Sabagon. Even on the Zenyatta, he's played a lot of Ana in the later weeks of the tournament, but sticking with Zenyatta so far tonight.
But the thing is, I think Jupiter having Kimahororo on the Diva means he can shut down the Ana play on the other side.
Yeah, it's
if they can
very
live.
tight. Oh, Azure eats a stun, but traded with Anakin. But Jupiter won't mind that trade. They have the closer respawn, and they can just step back for a hot second, take a breather, and now push back in, which is exactly what they're doing. Is Xenofly going to get demacked here?
And this is where getting that Lucio down early is so beneficial. AoE healing gone, speed boost gone, even though it's been nerfed. Jupiter, even with the respawn advantage as well, should be up to Cafe.
Yeah, that one there, Satchok, that's probably the straw that'll break the camel's back here. This leaves Ken Mohororo free to just harass out Xenofly. Eventually, we'll finish him off. And with that, Jupiter poised to get this cap.
And this is where Xeonflux has got to make a difficult choice. Does he stay on the Ana and use the Nano Boost, or does he swap to the Zen? Because eventually, he does want to swap to the Zen. If you see a Bionade land from him, Kemo Hororo probably hasn't done his job because Ana should not be getting good value while Kemo's on that Diva.
Satchok going to try and get a sneaky one here. He does lead in terms of ult charge, but Jupiter aren't quite close enough. And Satchok's just going to have to get back and think of it.
And importantly, neither Claire or Sabgod actually have defensive ultimates yet, so there is a timing window where if Global Esports go early, they can kind of get some members down.
Caveat being yet, though, because they're pretty close to them. There's going to be that nano boost, though, so here is that window. They're trying to open it. They're trying to smash it in. Actually scoops up Claire with a fire strike. They'll be happy to get that. It gets a bit of time off the clock.
Yeah, but honestly, it's only one member for one ultimate. It's not really super beneficial.
It's not good. It's better than nothing.
Satchok, it certainly is better than nothing. You wouldn't want to have an ultimate use and nothing happen out of it, but one ultimate use and one kill is probably not ideal either. Jupiter too happy to just walk back into spawn, receive that ultimate out of it. Now, Xeonflux being on the Ana, even less reason to do so because the ultimate's not there.
That's the thing. Now that pick really does start to hurt them more than help them. Now, Samurai D takes a snooze. That's going to be a free Earth Shatter coming through, but
didn't really connect.
Yeah, they got themselves a nice biotic grenade onto Samurai D, though, so he's going to end up getting finished off. Can't be saved by the Transcendence, so it's kind of worked out a little bit here for Global Esports.
But I think Jupiter, again, they're happy to just receive one big ultimate for one death, and it's kind of like, yeah, they're going to lose a bit of time, but macro-wise, Jupiter can snowball so effectively that you expect them to now win about 2 to 3 fights in a row, now that they're definitely ahead.
It's going to have to start happening, though, because the last thing you'd want is for that same cycle to repeat. One ultimate for one kill and Jupiter back off, but here's the beat double grab. Tayo got his eaten. That's really rough. And dies to the self-destruct. And what was I just saying? It's suddenly Jupiter pulling back once again. Global Esports having to use very little there, and suddenly, for how much Jupiter feel like they should be snowballing, they're the ones getting stopped up.
And they really should be landing grabs as well. Now we have to look at the Diva on the other side with Xenofly consistently eating these grabs away, and we saw it a lot on Lijiang, and now it's converting over to Kings Row, allowing them to defend further, see if the self-destruct can get anything.
Just sort of tossed forward to make some space. Satchok getting very low. They had to go ahead and commit a sound barrier. Again, Biotic Grenade on Samurai D, so he can't get healed up by Transcendence, but this time it matters a lot less. He has not taken the same kind of damage, but I'll tell you who is. It's all the rest of the tanks of Jupiter. They're still struggling to make any headway here. Another Earth Shatter out from Satchok. Doesn't quite get the easy follow-up, but they're still going to be able to pick up the rest of these kills. And now Jupiter have nothing for the next fight.
And this is a real head-scratcher for Jupiter because it's in fact so much so that Sabagod's like, all right, I'm going to go on the Ana as well. I'm actually not sure that's the correct decision because, again, we have to look at the Divas here, and so far Xenofly has been doing a fantastic job. I'm a little unsure if Sabagod's going to find the value. If teams really want to do this because they have good Anas, that's fine, but we'll have to see how consistent it can be, especially because Jupiter, well, they should have been winning with the other ultimates, and I think it's the missed execution that's been costing them. Let's see what happens now.
And now the grab out, biotic grenade, wrap around from Xeon Flux. Doesn't get as much of a connection as they'd like, but it's still Samurai D going to be going down here. So, I mean, Jupiter are just stuck in this endless loop now where no matter how much or how little Global Esports commit, Jupiter lose one member and back off, and sometimes it's more.
And honestly, the game plan was solid. For the first couple of engagements on B, you're thinking, okay, just get some ultimates out of the way, lose one member, not a big deal. But when they actually go into the fight that they're supposed to win and they don't, that's when you start to really think, oh, that's not a good news. That's not a good sign. It's certainly not good news either. And Jupiter have been struggling since then. This next Graviton Surge from Tayo absolutely must land.
You've got to compliment the ultimate uptime here for Global Esports. They've won so many of these fights on things like the fact that Satrok always has Shatter available seemingly. Speaking of, he's going to try and throw it out into countenance to the Graviton Surge of Tayo, which didn't get too much done, but that's a big Earth Shatter. Finally, Samurai D is looking to get the connection that he has been missing so far. We're all looking for a good connection, aren't we? That's going to be Jupiter finally getting themselves underway on this payload, having already lost 3.5 minutes of time.
And I'll be honest, he's hit that last Earth Shatter as well, the last time he did get one, but unfortunately no kills came out of it.
Yeah.
This time around at Jupiter, not only land the Shatter, but they also get the follow-up as well, which is ideal. You also do see the Graviton Surge come through from Tayo, and because that does start to connect, Jupiter, as long as they're not whiffing these ultimates, do actually find good execution when it matters, and now they get to make this real push for the speed cap. Global Esports will respond with an ultimate advantage.
And that's the thing, Jupiter, they don't have that big snowball that they would have had if they'd got this card in their possession 3 minutes ago. So just going to have to work with what they've got here. Grab from Little Rex, not too hot, but they'll be able to get Tayo, and Sabagod, unfortunately, going to get in the wrong end of Bubble Kitty there, who's going to pick himself up a second. Why not? And that nano boost on Samurai D is going to come to absolutely naught.
And this is where I think, you know, and Sabagod's reading the mind here as well. Both teams, in fact, are going to go back onto the Zen because you value the Transcendence counterplay against the Graviton Surge. When Lil Rax pops it down and Sabagod's there thinking, I wish I had a Transcendence right now, as his team is disappearing before him, that's when you're thinking it's not good. And when now Tayo has his own Graviton Surge and Xeon Flux is ready to receive that, you're going to see the power.
That's the thing, Xeon Flux made that adaptation several minutes ago. He's already well ahead of Sabagod, and it's going to pay off for Global Esports here potentially, who aren't that far off another Shatter and self-destruct anyway.
We're going to see Samurai D because he might be the key play.
Yes. Self-destruct lobbed up from Ken Mohororo, not really going to get anything much done. Xenofly in a bit of trouble, and reasonable Shatter, but they're struggling to follow up on it for now, finally able to get into the thick of it. There's the pickup onto Little Rax, and the Earth Shatter from Satrok not really going to get the same kind of work done. So Jupiter should be able to push this one through. It is in overtime, though. When you consider how much time they had at the start of B, that's maybe a little bit of a tough pill to swallow.
And that was a really difficult fight to take as well, because for Samurai D, a lot of pressure on his shoulders specifically. If he does not land the Shatter, and on top of that, if he does not block out the Shatter from Satrok, that's probably game over. That's the push over, and then suddenly they're going to be on defense instead. But now they get the second chance, a third chance, you could even say, because we're on to C, and Jupiter now pushing the double support ultimates can leverage this advantage.
This will probably happen in overtime, though, for Jupiter if it does happen. Self-destruct just kind of lobbed forward there for Xenofly. Very aggressive Transcendence from Sabagod, but they were starting to get a bit low. So if they can finish off someone like Satrok here, it'll be well worth it. Not quite getting the kill, but they are getting a lot of space.
Now this is where now they definitely wish they got some kills out of it. In fact, just getting some ultimate charge will do enough for them, at least for now. As the sound barrier as well still available for Claire, which he'll need up against the Graviton Surge, available for Lil Rex in just a second.
Global Esports have both their defensive tools as well, so even as the Earth Shatter and Grab come up on rotation for Jupiter, might not be as cut and dry.
And as we reach that 30-second mark, this is about the one-fight territory zone for both teams. Jupiter can't really afford to lose anymore. Lil Rex has been spotted.
They're going to go ahead and put their grab in first with the self-destruct. Little Rex going to answer with his own grab. Looking to get that follow-up now. Counter Shatter from Samurai D does stop up the counter-aggression. Now it's Satrok's turn. But by the time he throws it out, Azur's already dead and Xenofly is DMX. They aren't going to get anything done with that. So Jupiter coming out the better of that when all the cards are thrown down. Turns out they had just a little bit more higher ace or what have you, and with that Jupiter looking like they want to get this over the line now.
And they got a rally entrance and it's coming up online as well. Global Esports struggling to get respawners in there as the overtime kicks in. That's even slower respawn.
They're also leading in terms of the shatter and grab, if it even gets that far, because Global Esports, they've actually swapped off the Reinhardt. They're in full stall mode here. Going to have a hard time picking up those kills, though. Satchok, Lone Man on the payload, or Lone Hamster rather, is going to get finished off. And with that, there is no more Global Esports presence. Jupiter will get that cap.
And again, really good high-pressure decision making rather coming out of Jupiter, where you see Lil Rex on the high ground. You know he's got Graviton Surge. Tyre also has a Graviton Surge. If Jupiter can connect quicker, if they can get in first, they will get some really good early damage in there. Lil Rex is not only spot out, he's also pressured. By the time he wants to use Grav, he's on about 150, 160 HP. He can't even really join in on his own ultimate, and that's a big problem because it's kind of one of your main damage dealers gone, and Jupiter then collect the shadow kills as well. They then go on and snowball through the rest of the picks. Global Esports know they're in a lot of trouble because they've lost members. They haven't traded out any members on the other side. And as the overtime comes through, the respawns take longer, and then suddenly they don't have members that can contest.
Honestly, very nicely done by Jupiter towards the end there. Still maybe some causes for concern with how the earlier parts of B went. But when all said and done, they were able to get it over the line. That means worst case scenario here, Global Esports will cap and Jupiter will have an opportunity to bring this to a tie. And if they can anchor a defense somewhere here, this is still potentially quite winnable for them.
And to really contextualize the concerns as well, it's like Jupiter kind of run into issues midway through, but they're able to fix them and adapt later on. It's about now making sure they don't run into those issues to start with, because you look at the beginning, pretty good. You look at the end, pretty good. It's that middle section. If that doesn't exist for them, they actually push through and camp with a very competitive time. Now Global Esports have a lot of opportunity to really put themselves on the front foot for a time back.
Sabago was checking out that suspicious box there.
So this is a problematic situation as well, because Jupiter have opted for the 3-3. They want to go for the gentleman's agreement. And over Global Esports, we've seen the far players come through them on Li Zhang, and to be fair, they kind of should stick to this because they have such a big advantage with the Rhine on the other side. Well, yeah. I mean, the one gentleman extended out a hand and the other one received it and shook it.
Tell you what, Jupiter are going to breathe a bit of a sigh of relief at that, seeing Global Esports coming back out just on the 3-3. That would have been a very slow but sure loss otherwise, I would feel.
And now nothing slow about this push, and Global Esports just want to take the fight straight to the point.
Nice leap onto Satchok, really going to slow down Global Esports' momentum. Jupiter looking to make that counter-attack now. Samurai D going to be able to push forward before long, and he is also massively leading in ultimate charge, double stuns. No one quite the worst aware of it, but Satchok is staying low throughout the course of this entire fight. It's sure that he will eventually go down, and there you have it. Claire gets the kill credit. And with that, the rest of Global Esports going to have to start backing off this point, I would feel.
Oh, Shatter.
An Earth Shatter thrown out for good measure, just so that Global Esports can't retreat. And with that, Jupiter will pick up the rest of the kills and charge up their ultimates.
And by the way, I wanted to add, there was a case where Global Esports still win this fight after changing, and Jupiter, well, they would have been happy seeing the fire gone, but they'd be less happy to see Global Esports kind of snowballing through with a 3-3 instead. But that's not going to happen here. Jupiter going to lead. Shadow Wash thrown out. That's something to secure the point with. Whatever, they now have Graviton Surge advantage. That's a big deal.
This is where they can make up a lot of time if they keep this A defense going, and Samurai D with that nano boost, quick pickup on Azure. Nothing can stop that. Freight Train, Lil Rack's going to get found out as well. And Global Esports know that they just had to take that as a loss on the chin, but the fact that it was so cheap for Jupiter and they got 4 kills off it, it's probably making Global Esports shaking their boots a little.
And this is where they can still go into other ultimates. Grab hasn't been used by Tyre. Samurai D are going to go into another Earth Shatter pretty soon. This is now 2 fights in a row, 2 minutes already gone. Sabgar's actually hiding for a good angle here. If you can get a flank, you can actually land a good Bionade.
And Azure, didn't quite spot him out, so he can throw it in on top of the grab. Don't quite connect it. Global Esports going to be able to answer with the sound barrier first. Now their own grab. Azure's dead to the self-destruct though, and Jupiter didn't even need to commit the sound barrier for the grab. They're actually committing it later so they can double down on this fight. They're aware that they're running short on
late Transcendence.
They want to get as much out of this as they can, but good timing on the Transcendence from Zeon Flux. Going to be a nano boost available though for Jupiter, and Global Esports didn't get anything out of that Transcendence. Now Xeno Fly going to get demech, and Jupiter can keep putting the pressure on. They finish off Satchok as well, and Global Esports are again going to find themselves largely unable to retreat and losing so many members.
And by the way, Sabago did land a Bionade on both Bubble Kitty and Lil Rex while the Transcendence was up, so it was good and late, but also they barely managed to get out, and then not at all as Jupiter continued to run them through. Now down to 1 minute. This is where you can make up for a lot of that lost time that they themselves had on B. And now we're looking at a scenario where Global Esports might not actually make it to B, so Jupiter could just hold here.
I mean, hell, with that grabs and Earthshatter coming up available, they might make up for all of the lost time. And that's not even with either of those two ultimates I just mentioned. That is, again, just off the back of the nano boost. Even though it's only 1 kill, they're happy to take that because timing-wise, Global Esports are back against the wall.
So this is the only fight in this last minute that Global Esports can afford to lose. It's the one where they only take 1 member lost while receiving an ultimate on the other side, similar to what we saw the other in the opposite way when Jupiter were attacking. But Global Esports go into a must-win position now.
Nice grab out. Haven't actually thrown in the self-destruct. Comes in a little bit late from Ken Maharo, but Satchok's already dead. Now with that Global Esports, 1 man down and the most critical one in that 3-3 mirror. It's looking like Azure just barely going to get out by the skin of his teeth. Now 10 seconds remaining.
Global Esports got to push right now because they have ultimates to play with. They can't really afford to sit back. Satchok will join the team just in time, but I think somebody's got to go touch, and it's going to be Xenofly. 2-member Bionade, by the way.
Yeah, going to do a flyby for that one. That Bionade really hurt Little Rax to back off for a moment. The grab comes in. It's a little bit later than they would like, but it's enough. Claire gets stunned up. They didn't have a sound barrier just yet, but it guaranteed he wasn't going to get one either. Now Tayo gets run down. Global Esports at the 11th hour going to finally push their way onto this point. Look, you'll excuse the lack of full hold there, though, for Jupiter, because that nearly was, and they have absolutely made up for all their lost time from their offense.
All right, so now we get to really look at this game holistically from the perspective of the potential cap in all 3 points. Jupiter really struggled on B. Global Esports really struggled on A. This is talking about offense here. Global Esports now need to make sure this B is extremely good if they want to actually have a time bank on C.
They do have a couple of ultimates for it. They got the defensive tool here in the sound barrier, but Jupiter, honestly, they're coming up on another grab here. They're actually happy to waste more of Global Esports' time at this arch.
And Jupiter dictating the pace of the game as well. Once this card actually makes it through this archway, Jupiter are going to be forced to fight. But while that's happening, they're happy to just continue building ultimates. Graviton Surge just available now for Tayo. Very important ultimate.
This all just takes time for Global Esports. Time that they have very little of, all things considered. That's going to be the grab out from Tayo. They're going to go ahead, try and follow that one up onto the cart. Now self-destruct out from Xenofly. Blocked out. Double sound barrier. So far, the only casualty is Ken Mahororo's mech, but that does mean Lil Rax can grab with effective impunity. Nothing going to be able to stop that one. No defensive ultimates. No defense matrix to eat it. Global Esports going to keep the payload going. This is about how much time Jupiter had on their B offense.
A really good defensive play as well. I say defensive contextually for this attacking team of Global Esports, where they had to back out just a little bit, receive that Graviton Surge, block out the shadows, or survive both the big tank ults, and then walk forward, use their support ultimates, use their own Graviton Surge, and now potentially snowball through B. Again, this time needs to be effective because it's all about C. It's all about how much they can finish the entire map with.
But that is if they snowball through here. Ultimates, not really particularly one-sided. Jupiter are leading in that grab, and that could be the difference maker here. This is going to be a big Earth Shatter from Satchok.
He's really looking at the shield health for Samurai D as well. It's quite low right now. Sees an opportunity.
Commits it out. Does find Claire, but that's only one, and he's saved by the Transcendence for the time being. Satchok's the one in trouble, getting bumped and buffeted about. Self-destruct from Ken Mahororo. Brilliantly placed, thanks to the fact that Global Esports dove forward to save Satchok. And now suddenly, just as they were about to cap B, they are again finding themselves back up against the wall.
And I think that might be the self-destruct that secures the map as well. We're hearing to now 25-ish kind of seconds. Satchok has been staggered out. The card is nearly at the finish line, but that also means respawn and reinforcement distance for Global Esports is so long. Jupiter have so many tools available. Jupiter have what it takes to now complete this map and finish things off.
They've got the right ultimates here. Unfortunately, not quite so little time that they can just preemptively grab and stop anyone from getting on the cart, but here's going to be the commit now for Global Esports. Again, Xenofly, flyby on the side to ensure they get the overtime. Just squaring off. There's that grab. A little bit of an awkward angle, though. Hard to follow up on. They're trying to finish off Satchok, but not quite going to get it done. Earth Shatter. It doesn't get Satchok, but it gets a few members just in behind the shield. And that's Bubble Kitty. Drop down. Now some pressure coming in onto the rest of these members. They're still drilling down onto Satchok.
Oh, it's big.
But that's a brilliant placement on the self-destruct. You thought Ken Mahororo was going to save B. No, it's going to be Xenofly. And once again, Global Esports barely going to squeeze this one over the line.
And I'll tell you what, it's starting to look like if Jupiter kind of lose this map, map, or at least even lose this defense, it does start to feel like an upset, just like we were on Minjung Tower, because 2 out of 2 times on the overtime for both A and B, Jupiter had the right tools, had the right position. You kind of felt like they should have been able to complete a hold, and now we're into this part of the map where Global Esports have a real shot at finishing this and really forcing a time bank.
It would be an even time bank to be sure, but that's still alarming in other kinds of ways. And certainly it feels like Jupiter have lost several fights that were very winnable. It's going to be an Earth Shatter out from Satchok. Doesn't really get much done, and Savagod going to go ahead, commit a Transcendence. So 1 for 1 in terms of ultimates.
And this is where Jupiter now want to play kind of slow, kind of defensively. They have the ultimate advantage. They have the time advantage. They want to make sure no one goes down.
Oh, barely rescuing the mech there, but they do have to back up. They do have to give some space. They need to be careful that they don't get run down while they do so. Samurai D, speaking of getting run down, he finds himself a fraction of a foot too far forward and goes down. And the rest of them are just going to have to take that on the chin. Jupiter do have ultimates, but this is looking very dicey.
So that was, again, one affordable fight for them that they can lose. 30 seconds remaining. They just have to really stall this one up. They can push into the overtime. They can't have an advantage. But the grab!
Whoa! Anakin barely gets onto it on the side. Samurai D is already dead. The counter grab on the side as well. Really awkward, unfortunately. There's going to be some shadows coming out. Self-destruct layered in. Does find Xeon Flux, but bounces back with Tayo, and Jupiter are barely keeping presence on this point right now. It's currently really
5 seconds.
Roro. Samurai D going to come out on the wrecking ball, but they've lost all kill pressure. If they can at least force this to overtime, then they go to the time bank dead stinking even, and it's looking like that's the way it's likely to go with Kenma Hororo down again. Samurai D not going to get anything, and Savagod not quite there in time to rescue his main tank. That was a bit scary when you consider how many times it seemed like Jupiter was about to win it.
And now we're back to square one. We're back to where we began here, which is to say both teams have exactly even times. Both teams will once again be resetting this entire map. And it does feel like kind of what you mentioned here. Jupiter in position, at least 2 points out of 3. You kind of expected them to win. C was unfortunate for them because you get to that final push and you're starting to see the lights turn up for Global Esports and the lights dim down for Jupiter, and that's kind of momentum being lost, and we've kind of been applauding Jupiter and complimenting them for how they've been able to handle parts of this late game to say, okay, well, their attack wasn't too hot in that middle section, but start and finish, pretty decent. Now that they go into their attack again, this first A point, which was good for them to start with, needs to be good again.
That's the thing. If history repeats itself in terms of how the main phase went, then you would expect Jupiter to cap here and Global Esports to not. That would be enough for a Jupiter win. However, that is, as you say, assuming all things remain equal. If Jupiter get held off for one fight too many, which happens more often than they'd feel comfortable with, then they're no better off.
And by the way, they need to get at least 1/3 here, because for Jupiter, something on the clock means they put themselves in a winnable position. If they do get less than 1/3, it will be a draw scenario, and that definitely doesn't benefit them because they're behind in the series right now. So Jupiter, high pressure scenario.
Unfortunately, these first fights with 3-3 can often be quite slow as well, so they may only get the one shot here.
And we'll see what kind of playmaking Xeon Flux can do on the Ana as well. Notably in 1 minute, it is actually a pretty decent pick now, because unlikely to really see the Transcendence versus Graviton Surge play unless this really starts to go long.
One good biotic grenade or one early nano boost. And speaking of, it's Tayo, but he finds the little racks. That's Jupiter already making headway. And yeah, Satchok in a world of trouble. Anakin does get picked, but it's not really an even trade. That's going to be Jupiter nearly buying their first third. Here is Xenofly going to get stunned and D-Mech. Now Satchok, the lone tank on this point. Xeon Flux working overtime to try and keep all the tops off, but it is not looking likely. And indeed, Satchok looking to get drilled down here. They're in full retreat. Satchok's actually not even with the team. Finally get him charged back, but yes, it's going to be Jupiter setting up on the point to cap it out.
And this is where 1/3 would have been minimal expectation, but I think Global Esports want to just go for the final contest.
Earth Shatter out just to stop too many members getting on. They don't actually get the follow-up on that in itself. Anakin dead as well, thanks to that Nano Boost grab. Going to come out there to try and finish off some members here. Good bump back onto Tayo means he can't get the work done himself. And this is where things get a bit dicey for Jupiter. They lose Claire. Kenma Hororo going to have to self-destruct to preserve that mech. Might not be able to get back in it if they're not careful, but Bubble Kitty does go down. And Anakin's going to come back into the Doomfist just so that they can bring some more force to bear nice and quick, smart. They're struggling to finish off any members here though, Jupiter. They are the ones actually playing defensively, and they actually can't afford to back too far off the point to give space, but with that the Anakin coming in on the Doomfist. There we go. Gonna slam some members around.
Okay, so all the extra distance now is just going to be bonus points for Jupiter. The fact that they capped out at all is a big deal. 1 minute is not a lot of time to work with. Most teams don't cap out that point for the most part, and our Global Esports are really in trouble if they don't stop this current positioning, because every single meter that Jupiter push, Global Esports must match.
And because it's quite a late fight loss for Global Esports, they actually can't take an early defense at this archway, so Jupiter get a bit of free space as well.
And we'll see what they can do with the double support ultimates. Notably, Lil Rex does have Graviton Surge, but this is where that Transcendence does start to really help you over the Ana play from Xeon Flux. Now, he does have a Nano Boost, and that was pretty pivotal last time. It needs to be again.
Really, both teams very evenly matched in terms of available ultimates, aside from where the picks are different. And then, of course, the sound barrier for Claire. Maybe that's going to have to be the X factor here for Jupiter.
And this is where Jupiter can't afford to wait. They don't want to be patient here anymore. They want to win, but
that massive counter grab is sorted there now out from Tayo, but they've already lost Samurai D. So what else can they get done? There's a lot of low members on Global Esports, but none of them quite dead yet. But there they start going. Now they need to be able to finish off someone else. Xenofly takes a stun. Satchok, a lot of damage. And Tayo still alive in this fight, means he's at 100 charge and absolutely ripping through Global Esports, who commit a very late sound barrier here. Yeah, trying to get a bit of a second win, but it ends up being just more than they could afford to commit.
That's problematic because they need to be setting up for this next B defense. They can get there in time, but now when they do, they don't have a sound barrier. They need to be looking for the actual win conditions here. They were never going to win with 3 members, even after using sound barriers. So Jupiter very likely can cap B as well.
This is where it really starts to look good for Jupiter, even just in the context of their defense.
Especially now.
Early pick on Azure. This is a 5v6 at best in Global Esports. They're still kind of going to go for it now. It's a 4v6, and they know they cannot. They have to let that cap go.
This is going so poorly for Global Esports. They even had a shatter advantage. If they had kept the other 2 members alive, Satchok maybe makes a play, Jupiter maybe lose that fight, and Global Esports breathe a sigh of relief. We're all the way into C, and this is, again, off a 1-minute time bank.
I love this aggression. I love this confidence out of Jupiter, pushing forward, making space, making Global Esports give up as much as possible. If they can psych out Global Esports and get an extra meter, it's worth it. Jupiter have made so much extra ground here.
Let's see what Tayo does with the next grab. Samurai D to get stunned up. Here it comes.
Yeah, he's just going to be fine, though, sitting on the front of that train cart, and now trying to get the pressure on. Azure down. Now that Transcendence has run out for Xeon Flux. The rest of the members start taking some pain. They've got the closer respawn. Good pick up, though, on Tayo. Now Xenofly D-Meg. So, sort of trades, but kind of still favoring Jupiter, who are also coming into some other ultimates. Shatter out. They're going to be able to clean up more. Jupiter going to make even more space, and this gives them time to get their Zarya back with the team.
And guess what? Sabagot had a Transcendence versus a Graviton Surge, and guess what? Xeon Flux changed to a Zenyatta, did not have a Transcendence against Tayo's, and Jupiter could complete this entire map.
It's going to be one last fight, though.
It happened. It happened.
Man, nice bump off. Full cap out. Now Global Esports have to match that just to get to another time bank.
So here's the thing. I said on Jupiter's defense, on A, if they did not hold A and they lost, would be a bit of an upset. On B, if they lost, would be a bit of an upset. Now we get to this position, off a 1-minute time bank, they have completed the entirety of King's Row. It's a 6-point to 3-point difference. There should be no way that Global Esports can match it. There should be no way that Jupiter can lose this map right now. If they lose this map, it would be an incredible victory for Global Esports. And I think Global Esports, at that stage, just take the 3-0 in this series.
I mean, it would be such an unmitigated disaster if that were to happen to Jupiter here. But right now, it does feel like when Jupiter are firing on all cylinders, they are looking by far and wide the better of these 2 teams here. The thing that has undone them, though, is the fights they have lost where it feels like they should have won it, where they feel like they've done all that groundwork and they don't actually get it over the line. And a part of me feels like this is that same situation, all the groundwork done, but it's not completed until they actually win the defense.
So this is where they have a lot of chances to correct that, because we've seen a somewhat decent amount of it on, again, that B offense, that C defense as well, but across this entirety of a map off, again, a similar 1-minute time bank, Jupiter, you don't expect them to kind of be making those mistakes. And again, if they do, then I think the series is kind of over.
So this time around, Global Esports not going to psych themselves out. They are going to go ahead and commit to the quad DPS with the Wrecking Ball as well. So this should just slowly but surely chip Jupiter away from this point, unless Global lose a few too many members.
And as long as Global Esports execute this properly, they're insanely favored to win this opening point.
Little Rex, taking a bit of pain, is going to be able to heal back up, and Jupiter will, as we say, slowly but surely get pressured off this point. That's already 1/3 done, and now eyeing up their second.
And they should be getting ultimate soon. That's
God.
really leveraging into the advantage here. Little Rex going to get picked as well. This is where Global Esports will complete that choke.
Yeah, and Kenma Horora gets demech. Nice counter trade, though, onto Satchok and then Xenofly, but Jupiter are still coming out the worst for wear of this. On the whole, it's looking like... Oh, another one comes in on Xeon Flux.
We need
they
a
got
barrage.
close to respawn. I mean, this could still go the way of Jupiter. It's looking less and less likely.
Bubble Kitty just going to get quite low there. Jupiter going to try and force this one.
There it is. Azure does go down, but Bubble Kitty has managed to get the damage that they needed. And the respawns are there for Global Esports. A little bit dicey than they might have liked, but they do get onto the cart.
So the first point is incredibly difficult. That's where most teams fail. Now that we're actually on the cart, we can start snowballing in the overtime as well. If Jupiter start losing members, very slow respawns. This is actually where I'd like to see Global Esports potentially change up their comp entirely.
Ooh.
I meant to go into 3-3, but they're actually going to bring the Batiste out.
This is a very interesting one. It's essentially just 3-3, but flexing onto the Sombra.
That's technically a 2-2-2, actually. This is
In a way, yeah.
No, it just straight up is. It's 2D. Oh, in a way, I think you count
That's the
Batiste.
thing, yeah.
You count Batiste as
What do
DPS
we
or
call
not?
Baptiste? Yeah.
He's a support. It's a 3-2-1, but
Yeah.
with an EMP, it will be interesting to see how they aggress on top of it. Jupiter will be looking to just charge a bolts.
Let's see if it's a 3-2-1 go or a 3-2-1 you're out. There's an EMP, good connection. Samurai D gonna get dropped because of it, and Tayo in a bit of trouble as well. Ooh, barely topped off. They actually lose Xeon Flux. This is where Jupiter can start pushing back, and they've got more ultimates to lean into. Satchok's Earth Shatter not so hot there, despite the lack of a Reinhardt.
This is the last fight.
Jupiter to block it, and now suddenly Global Esports way too low on members. Xenofly, Little Rags, they're all falling off here. Little presence left on the cart. The overtime going to tick down. It's just Azure trying to keep it up. That invulnerability field going to keep them alive for a fraction of a hair longer, but not long enough. Jupiter, they do it, and they even up our series.
And keeping that series alive and going as well. And now this starts to get really exciting because even just in the microcosm of Lijiang, where it got to 1-1, even Night Market, which was very close, you know, right to the wire, you kind of feel like, okay, strengths of these teams, very close. Even on Kings Row, you start to think, okay, well, Jupiter are swinging ahead, but Global Esports are making it competitive. At any stage, Global Esports can take it to another level or turn up the heat, and they start winning again.
The thing is, though, at least in the course of Kings Row, it felt like Jupiter were the ones who had a little bit more in the tank. They had that sort of explosivity to have that second time bank offense to push all the way through. At that point, it almost felt like a gimme, but the point there is they had that in them, and Global Esports didn't. They were good, but they weren't amazing. They didn't kick it up that extra level.
And I think part of that comes down to composition as well, because, again, a lot of teams fail on that first point, so they want to secure it. They want to go for what is the highest percentage chance to win A. That is to play fire DPS comps versus a pure Ryan Goats defense, which is what Jupiter brought forth. Okay, you win A, but now how do you push into B and C with this kind of comp? Once you get to C, we're assuming you're going to finish the map here, because you kind of need to stay competitive. Eventually, you will have to play 3-3. If you swap after finishing A onto B, you're going to be at a huge ultimate deficit. If you don't swap, well, guess what? You're going to have to swap eventually. So it's kind of like almost a lose-lose scenario. It's a very difficult place to be in, up against a rock and a hard place, certainly for Global Esports, and unfortunately, just couldn't quite break their arm free.
Yeah, it's a bit of a deal with the devil in a way. You know, you take the composition that's going to get you the point A win, but at what cost? And I mean, it's tough. You certainly can't criticize the call. I think as well, when you're in that situation where your opponent fully capped out, you're in extraneous circumstances in the first place.
And let's be real about something as well. On League Junk was Global Esports that clutched out right at the end. On Kings Row, it was Jupiter that clutched out right at the end. And we're about to head towards the end part of the series anyway. The second half will be coming up very, very shortly. So make sure you don't go anywhere. This is super competitive. You don't want to miss it. See you after the break.